Hi, and welcome back. This week in Level F, we're going to be going over lessons 45 through 48. You will need your worksheets 33 through 36, the math card games book, and the multiplication card deck. In lesson 45, that is the assessment that we have been preparing for the last week. So if your child misses a few problems, I'd go ahead and move on. That's fine. I'd work those problems in as warm-ups until they're really solid. If your child has had difficulty with this assessment, with more than just a few problems, I would make sure to go back to the lesson 41 through 44 video that we did to see which lessons you need to review. All right, moving on to lesson 46. We will be practicing the multiplying that's needed for long division. It's called octopus multiplying. And please note, if your book was published before March 27th of 2019, there is a correction to this lesson, and you'll need to make that correction before you start teaching. I will leave a link to the corrections page that's on the Right Start website in the description. The warm-ups are on the worksheet today, and they involve dividing decimal fractions by decimal fractions. If your child has learning difficulties, please read the note about long division under the explanations column. Many people find that multiplying in long division is difficult because the numbers are not lined up the way we usually see them. So to help your child get over this difficulty, we're going to be introducing octopus multiplying. Let's take a look at what that looks like.
Okay, so for octopus multiplying, we're going to set up the numbers as if it were a division problem without the number inside the box. So rather than writing a number in here, we're just going to write the quotient and the divisor. And the reason for that is because we're focusing on this multiplication activity that takes place. Let's just put a division sign here so that you can see what I'm talking about. When you're multiplying these numbers to get the partial products down here. Okay, so your child won't have this box, they'll just have a line. And what we're going to have them do is say, okay, 7 times 4 is how much? That's 28. 7 times 5 is 35, plus 2 is 37. So this is simply to practice the multiplication that occurs when you're doing long division.
So we're just breaking down the process into manageable steps. After practicing a few of these problems, move on to the worksheet and have your child do the first 2 rows. Go ahead and check those answers, make sure that everything is okay. Next, you'll incorporate the octopus multiplying into a division problem. Some children really love short division and they resist writing down those intermediary steps needed for long division. I happen to have one of those children, and I just encourage him to follow the steps, to write it down. In the long run, all that really matters is that they know how to do it, because in practical life, long division is mostly done with a calculator. So it's not something that you have to get hung up on. If your child is having great difficulty with long division, please read the explanation about children with learning disabilities and don't insist on them mastering long division. It doesn't mean that they can't try it, and it doesn't mean that they don't know how to do it, but the mastery part is not going to be the focus. But for kids who don't have issues other than I'd rather do short division, just encourage them to go ahead and write out the steps. All right, have your child complete the worksheet and then answer the in conclusion questions. You can play Remainder Hearts game, which is D9 in the Math Card Games book. And we have a video to show you how to play it. So I'll leave a link in the description below for that. All right, lesson 47. We will extend short division to long division. So we're going to use their ability to do short division and show them how they can use that in long division. The warm-ups are on worksheet 35, and they involve dividing decimal fractions once again. In this lesson, the quotient won't be provided. So in the last lesson, the quotient was already provided, and we just figured out what the steps were below, right? But now your student's going to have to figure out the quotient. So we'll start off with single-digit divisors, and we'll move up to double ones. To figure out the quotient, we can round the divisor to make it easier. After a few sample problems that you work together with your child, I would have your child complete the first 2 rows on the worksheet. Next, we'll move on to double-digit quotients, and we will solve the same problem using both short division and long division. So let's take a look at that.
Okay, so let's look at the problem 689 divided by 22. Now, most kids could do 689 divided by 22 with short division. So we're going to show how that works. We'll say, how many times does 22 go into 68? The answer is 3. How much is left over? That would be 2. So I'm going to write the little 2 there next to the 9. 22 goes into 29 how many times? That would be once, with a remainder of 7. Okay, that's what your child has been doing with short division. Now, what will that look like with long division? So I'm going to rewrite the problem. And I'm going to say, okay, 22 goes into 68 3 times. How much is 3 times 22? That's 66. Then I'm going to subtract the 6 from the 8, write down the 2, bring down the 9. 22 goes into 29 how many times? Goes in once. Can write down the 22 because 1 times 22 is 22. Do my subtraction, and I see that my remainder is 7. I get the exact same answer. This is just longer. Now, your child is probably going to say, well, why would I want to do this if I could do this? And they're absolutely right. If they can do short division, they should do short division, because a good thing about an algorithm is its efficiency. And the less you have to write, the better the algorithm is. However, there's plenty of times when short division would be too complicated.
Okay, so after completing the worksheet, have your child answer the in conclusion questions, and then you can play Remainder Hearts, which is D9 in the Math Card Games book. In lesson 48, we will practice finding trial quotients in long division. Once again, the warm-ups are on the worksheet, and they involve dividing decimal fractions. The last lesson, we dealt with divisors that would be rounded down. And in this lesson, we're going to be working with numbers that can round up or down. Sometimes our guesses are going to be wrong, and that's okay because we'll be pretty close. We can figure out how to fix that problem. So let's think about it. If your quotient is too low, we just need to add 1 to the quotient and subtract again, right? Because it just meant that we didn't subtract enough. If our quotient is too high, we should erase the number that we wrote down, subtract 1 from it, and then multiply again. Let's see what those problems might look like.
Okay, let's look at this problem. Here we have 229, and we're going to divide by 37. Now, I can round this up to 40, and I know 40 times 5 would be 200. So let's start with that guess. Now I have to multiply it out. 5 times 7 is 35. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 3 is 18. 9 minus 5 is 4. 12 minus 8 is also 4. Uh-oh, see this? It's too big. 37 could go into 44 as well, right? This number has to be less than our divisor. So what do? We simply increase this number up here to a 6, and we subtract 1 more time. Okay, so 14 minus 7 is 7. 3 minus 3 is 0. So I have a remainder of 7. All right, so that's how you do it if your first initial guess at a quotient was too low. Let's take a look at what happens when our initial guess at the quotient is too high. Here I have 290 divided by 42. Now I'm going to round down and I'll say 40. And I know that 4 times 7 is 28. So that sounds like a pretty good guess. But since it's 42, we actually have to multiply it. So 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 4 is 28, plus 1 is 29. Oh, look at that. That is too much. So what do? We have to go ahead and erase our guess. Take 1 away from it, so subtract 1. We're going to bring that down to a 6. And try again. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 4 is 24, plus 1 is 25. And then I can subtract 2 from 10. That would be an 8. This is an 8. 8 minus 5 is 3. Aha, now I have the correct quotient because 38 is less than 42. That's how you solve a problem if your initial guess at the quotient is too high.
Okay, I hope that helped to see that those two problems in action. I find the section multiplying mentally to check a divisor and the explanation that's just to the right of that to be very interesting. And I would make sure that you explain to your student how people do this mentally. It is explained in the book, but I would just emphasize it because I think some kids, they think there's something magical happening when people can figure things out in their brain, and it's really not magical, and they can figure it out too. It is a lot easier for those children who are very visual, but it is possible for all of us to do it. We just need to know how to do it, and this section tells you how. All right, so after finishing the worksheet, ask your child the in conclusion questions, and then play Division War, which is D12 in the Math Card Games book. That's all for this week, and I'll see you next time for lessons 49 through 52. Thanks, bye-bye.